First of all, congratulations to you and the people of Israel on the occasion of
Thank
the
you.
72nd anniversary of your independence. And of
Thank
course,
you so much.
but because of the situation, I'm sorry to hear that you don't have much to celebrate. No fireworks, no street parties, no air shows, right? Even the function in Bangkok that you hold annually to celebrate the occasion is off the table, right? So anyway, Mr.
That's
Ambassador, I
true.
would like to start by quoting an excerpt from an address by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on the occasion of the Independence Day. He said, "We have never had an Independence Day like this. We are far apart physically, but we have never been closer." I mean, this is touching in the remarks. I mean, so how would you like to tell us, I mean, what this means to you as ambassador and as an Israeli?
Well, it's a very strange national day. Never had been in the history that in the main day of celebration, we actually have a total lockdown in Israel. Nobody is allowed to go out of the houses, not even for shopping for food, for the whole 24 hours of the national day. The only exception is actually that we had a kind of a gesture that the Air Force had an air show as a salute to all the medical staff and all the hospitals. We had 4 airplanes flying over all the medical hospitals and medical centers in Israel to thank all the medical staff that have been at the forefront of this war on the epidemic of the COVID-19. But like the Prime Minister said, it's a good chance for the families to stay in and be united as families. Sometimes it may be too much, but in the day-to-day life of modern times, we sometimes lose what we call quality times with our families. So it's a good opportunity for that.
There's a brighter side to the pandemic then.
And what
That's
about
true.
what about lockdown measures all over Israel? Is it still in place, the lockdown measures?
The lockdown measures are still in place. We are starting to lift down the lockdown measures, but in a very careful way. We started this week to let some businesses go back to work. But the same way that the Thai government is doing, we're trying to do it in a calculated manner. So there will not be too many opportunities for the pandemic to go back. And of course, we will reassess every 14 days how is it going and what is the rate that people are getting sick. I'm happy to say that today was the first day in Israel that we had more people who recovered from the COVID-19 than people who were sick of the COVID-19 in Israel. And we also have a very low mortality rate, thanks God. So we are doing okay, not great, but doing okay.
Ambassador, and what about Thai labor in Israel? Have you got report how many of them and how they are being treated?
Well, Thai laborers in Israel are being treated like any other Israeli citizen. There's no difference between Thai laborers and Israelis, not for this thing and not for any other thing. I'm not aware of any Thai laborer that got sick from COVID-19. I think if that would have happened, we would have heard about it. And I'm glad that none of them caught it. I think mainly because they are in the periphery, where social distancing is much more possible, because it's not urban cities. So I'm hoping that it will go on like that. But they are as safe as possible in these difficult times. And, if somebody would get sick, he will, of course, be treated like any other Israeli with the best possible medical care that we can do.
Ambassador, we know that Israel has been called startup nation. So what's the test for the startup nation, how does this like a test for startup nation like Israel to cope with the pandemic?
That's a good question. Actually, a lot of our startups kind of switched their attention to see what can they contribute in order to cope with this all the issues that are coming up with the COVID-19. One very interesting thing that is already working is an app that we call the Magen, which means translates to shield. This is an open source code app that anybody can use and can modify also. It allows the authorities to see if people were nearby, people who were identified as people who got sick by COVID-19, and then alert those people who were next to them more than 15 minutes and ask them to go to self-isolation. This is, like I said, an open source code. And actually tomorrow we have a webinar with the Thai authorities trying to pass them to the knowledge that we have about this specific app. And of course, if they would like to use it, we will be more than happy. And of course, if they would like to change it and adapt it to some of the Thai necessities, they will be able to do that.
I understand that what you're talking about is one of the 3 tools that you mentioned in your article that was published in the Bangkok Post recently, right? That Israel, because of this crisis, once again was forced to think fast and then to innovate, and then coming up with at least 3 particular tools that you believe are helpful in fighting the coronavirus. Can you elaborate on these instruments that you talk about in your article?
Yes, another one that I think is worthwhile mentioning is called Firefly. Firefly is an app that allows you to identify, in these times, there are a lot of people who went into an economic dire situation where they need to have food or medicines brought to them. And we are talking about large numbers. This is not like a few people, but really large numbers. And what happens is that when you try to get every one of them, the food or the medicines, you find out sometimes that the addresses are not correct, et cetera, et cetera. So this app actually allows everybody to make the correction necessary and administer all the information. So it can be very efficient that all the people that need, and we're talking about large number of people that need this kind of food brought to their addresses, it will be able to get there in the most efficient way. This is also open source code, and everybody that wants to use it can use it also. And again, if they want to change it or adapt it, they can do that also.
Okay, and this is being used now in Israel, right, Ambassador?
It is. It's used now in Israel, and it's used. We found it very, very efficient. Of course, we don't have large numbers like in Thailand because Israel is a relatively small country. We're doing it in the hundreds of thousands, and the larger the number is, the more efficient.
Ambassador, and what kind or what type of innovation or technology that you can think Israel and Thailand can be working together in terms of fighting COVID-19? Any type of products that you see that can be useful in this situation?
I'm not sure about the specific technology or product that can be worked by both Thais or Israelis. But I want to tell you, as ambassador, Israeli ambassador to Thailand, that I found out that we Israelis have a lot to learn from Thais about the way we conduct ourselves in this kind of situations. I really find it very, very admirable the way the Thai people conducted themselves in this situation. First of all, there is no hysterical reactions. People are very calm. People respect the social distancing. You can find everywhere people with masks. You can see everywhere alcohol gel. You can see people everywhere cleaning the elevators or whatever it is that is in public use. And both me and my wife, we are very, very, we found ourselves really admiring again and again the way that not only Thailand, but Thai people especially conduct themselves in this kind of situation. And I think this is one thing that we Israelis can learn from Thailand.
Mr. Ambassador, in Thailand and I think in most other countries, people have started talking about the so-called new normal. And I'm sure in Israel also is talking about this. But in Israeli context, what would the new normal be?
Well, I'm not sure that we actually know what the new normal will be. I'm afraid that the new normal will have to wait till there will actually be a vaccine that somebody will develop and find out. But in Israel, for example, it will be very hard to keep social distancing for a long time because Israel is a very densely populated country, as you probably know. There's more than 8 million of us on a very small territory of 20,000 square kilometers. And 2/3 of this 8 million are in a very, very small part of the country. So it will be very, very hard for Israelis to go along with social distancing and everything that has to do with that for the long stretch. Also, I'm not sure what would be, I mean, you have to think about restaurants and airlines. Can they actually, the economic model, can it work, social distancing for airlines and restaurants? I mean, you're talking about 1/3 of the capacity for restaurants if they want to put social distancing in the restaurants, etc. So I'm not sure what will be the outcome on that. However, in Israel, we are somewhat lucky because the main export of Israel, as you know, is high-tech. And high-tech is the industry that is the least affected by this pandemic because anyway, working from home or social distancing is almost meaningless for this kind of industry that is anyway working across the oceans and distances. So at least on this point in Israel, we are a bit lucky that the main industry, at least, will not really suffer from this COVID-19.
Ambassador, many countries around the world are discussing exit strategy of this pandemic. What about Israel? What's the plan of exit strategy?
Well, the plan is basically to find out which kind of segments of population are less vulnerable to this, to the COVID-19, and also what areas are more or less vulnerable to this, to the COVID-19, and of course, which kind of businesses and workplaces are less vulnerable, and try to release them by this kind of mixed system, if you would like, and of course, assess every 2 weeks how are we doing vis-a-vis the capacity of the medical system to cope with the numbers that will probably increase. Also, like everybody else, we are trying to increase the number of testing that should be very aggressive. And antibodies is also something we are thinking about. And we are very hopeful that some of our startups will come up with some kind of a solution that will make it even easier than it is today. We have a lot of things that are in process, but unfortunately, I cannot say that we have something that as yet has been proven 100% to be the magic bullet that everybody is waiting for.
Mr. Ambassador, how is life of ambassadors in Bangkok, like yourself, being affected by the shutdown? Big changes?
It's a huge change because the work of diplomat is actually about meeting people, seeing people, and this is the biggest chunk of the work and life of diplomat has been taken away from us. So that's not only a problem, but it's a bit sad, I would say, that we've been deprived of our colleagues professionally, but also our friends here in Thailand. And that is a huge change for us, not for the better. But we are hoping for better times, and we know that there will be better times. And
Certainly.
being in Thailand is always good.